Hey guys, welcome back to Sad Dad. My name's Dave Abkarian, and I am a comedian out of Fresno, California, and this is a podcast where I sit down with my fellow funny friends, my fellow comedians, and we talk about dads. Hi, how are you? How's your week been? It's been a busy week for me. Tonight is our first. We're starting a brand new show. It's a Wednesday show. And it's at this really cool place called Full Circle Olympic. I'm really excited about it. I know I've mentioned it before on the show, but tonight's the first night, and I'm really like nervous / excited. I don't know. I mean, it's a really cool room. It's a really big room though, and so if we don't fill it out, it's gonna look real sad. But I feel good about it. There's a lot of people that are really, really excited about it. So I'm nervous, feeling a little overwhelmed. Yeah, a lot of shows happening. A lot of shows. This week has actually been a lot of fun. Our Friday show was awful though. We had this lady in our Friday show. It was like a really light turnout that night, and there was this lady that was sitting right in the front row, and she would not shut the fuck up. I was like, lady, please stop. And it was the weirdest. This has never happened to me with a heckler before, because I was hosting that night. So I was like, you gotta stop, lady. You're literally ruining the show. And I brought a comedian up, and I went outside to like huff on my vape. I went outside the venue to like huff on my vape, and she just happened to walk out. She was going to like have a cigarette, and then I just started talking to her, and it was funny. We had this chat. She was like, well, I'm just trying to, she says what every heckler says, which is, I'm just trying to add to the show, give you guys something funny to talk about. It's like, well, we have jokes. We work very hard at, writing our jokes and our material so that we have something funny to talk about. We're not writing any of this with, I hope there's a crazy blonde lady in the front row in mind. That's never a thing that's going on as we're like, feverishly writing in our notebooks. We're not just like, oh, this joke will never work unless there's some psycho blonde in the room. That's not how we do it. Anyway, but I got talking to this lady, and she has this like super autistic son. I do this bit about on stage about like a really uncomfortable parenting situation that my daughter puts me into, and it's a story I tell, and it's pretty funny. It's one of my favorite bits to tell. And I looked at this lady, while I was in the middle of this bit, I looked at this lady, and she wasn't laughing. And I asked her, I was like, "You're not laughing? Is that not funny to you?" And she's like, "Well, no, I have this really autistic son, and one time I had to stop him from humping the caretaker's leg. So your thing doesn't sound that bad to me." I was like, "Wow, that's real." So anyway, I'm talking to her outside. As she's smoking a cigarette, I'm huffing on my vape, and she, like I said, she was doing the thing where I'm just trying to add to the show, make it funny. And I'm like, look, the thing is, she was actually being, to her credit, she was actually saying very funny things. Like, it was just neither the time nor the place for her to be saying those funny things. And I was like, listen, you come out on a Monday or Tuesday, and you can do the open mic, and you can just be as loud and as funny as you want on stage with us. But I need you to just stop. Like, I need you to, you were actively ruining the show. I'm glad you're here, but stop. And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. It's just, I have my son, he's so hard for me to work with, and I was really looking for a release." And I was like, "I get this. Just stop making excuses. Just be cool. Just be cool." And to her credit, the rest of the show, she was very cool. So I've never had a straight up heart to heart with a heckler before, and it worked. Oh man, the rest of the show went great. So anyway, yeah, and her and I are Facebook friends now. I guess it kind of has a happy ending. I don't know. So that's been me. Oh man, I got a great episode for you guys today. Last week's episode, I mentioned it. I was in a real pinch, and I had my daughter Abigail on, and you guys responded very positively to that. I'm glad you guys enjoyed that show. I just kind of pulled out of my ass at the last second, and it was a lot of fun. And I'll try to have Abby on again in the future. I try not to overplay that card, She likes being on the show though, and you guys like hearing her. So the download numbers for that episode were like through the roof. I'm like, holy shit, gonna have you on more often, kid. And but today's episode, kind of back to normal. Neither my mom nor my daughter appear on this episode of Sad Dad. This is actually just a down and dirty sad dad with a comedian, a very funny, very talented comedian named Tom Smith. And this guy is somebody that I look up to a lot in comedy. He's helped me a lot as far as my joke writing, and he was a big cheerleader of mine very early on, and very encouraging of me, and he's been doing it a long time, and you know, guys like him, when I compliments from guys like Tom mean a lot to me, just as a young comic myself. So I've been wanting to have him on for forever. He's a very dear friend of mine, and finally made it happen. Tom doesn't have a car, so I had to drive all the way out to his house and bring him here to do this episode. But it was all right because I like hanging out with Tom Smith. So this episode goes off the rails a few times. There were a few things that we said that I did have to edit out. So I was like, wow, this got a little racy, and so I had I don't think you guys will notice. I was pretty smooth about it, and it's just a lot of fun, and I had so much fun sitting and talking with Tom Smith. So here we go, guys. Let's jump into it. Tom Smith.
Snap. Yeah, exactly.
It would just break.
Oh, not be functional.
Yeah, get our levels here.
Holy moly, man. This is like a professional fucking setup.
Oh, thanks, dude.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of cobbled it together over a few years. Cool.
All right, how are we? How am I? 1, 2, 3, checkity, check.
Yeah, you're sounding good, buddy.
All right. Ooh, pop screen action here.
Yeah. All right.
It's nice. If I end up, if I start to fade out, well, no, this is pretty fucking good either way, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, cool. I've been trying to do a better job of talking directly into the mic during my interviews, because I'll kind of like sit and then I'll turn towards my guest. So I'm trying to be better about that.
Well, I'm having a hard time with my fucking, with the Finleys. It's weird.
Is it?
It's not as well. So the setup isn't as kind of pretty as this one is. Sure.
I made this block of wood. I didn't make the wood. I mean, I drilled the holes.
Well, only God could make a tree.
Yeah, it's true. Because these used to like have these clippy things that would clip on the side of the table, and like this rounded edge, they would fall off all the time.
That would be awkward.
Yeah,
that would be awkward.
I like how casual the Finley setup is, though. It's just kind of, you guys are just sitting there talking.
It does have the grace of it. It does travel pretty easily. That's the one thing it definitely does.
Yeah. Because you do the handheld mics and you just kind of like sitting there.
Yeah, basically, it's a handheld mic on a fucking stand that's over here to the side.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Cut to we did the one in L.A. Cut to us in like some cafe.
Yeah.
And Joe, God bless him, had made plans ahead with the wait staff and the hostess, and they were like totally cool with it. And
He's so smooth. Joe is, dude. He can get away with so much.
Yes. Absolutely. But it'd be interesting to try a podcast without Joe.
Really?
It's going to be interesting, yeah.
Are you thinking about getting one going?
Oh, maybe. I have a couple of ideas for some stuff that I'd like to do, but, the equipment's his, first off, so that'd be a little bit trickier. It definitely would require
just
an investment.
A one-man show?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah?
I don't know what it would be about, though.
And that's the hardest part. It's like, what do you do that hasn't been done?
Right.
What's your angle?
What's my niche?
What
am I interested in that anybody else on the fucking planet is interested in?
Yeah, and then just like filling out the content. Can you talk about that one thing by yourself for 45 minutes?
Maybe. Although really, it's not what I want. That's kind of the way I imagine it. If I do, it would be like an interview show.
Oh yeah,
kind of like this.
Yeah.
I like the idea of just interviewing randomish fucking people, because my theory is that everybody's story ultimately is interesting if they're willing to tell you what the truth is.
Yeah, and you kind of have to cut to the core of it. I've always wanted to like sit down with one of those like blue collar dudes that's worked in a factory for like 35 years. That's not used to talking about himself.
The guy named Studs Terkel. Do you ever read him?
No.
He was a Chicago like radio personality for like 50 years or something like that. And he used his radio program for that. And then, like, every decade or 15 years, he'd take his interviews and he'd put them into a book, sort of depending on what it was. So he did one on working. So he talked to people about their jobs and their working life.
Yeah.
Had this great interview with a guy who was... there's actually a movie coming out very soon based partially on this guy, which was he was a clan dragon in a small town in the middle of nowhere. And by the time like Studs Terkel had talked to him, he'd like gone all the way over to the other side and was a union organizer.
Oh wow!
He was like, you know, he came to the realization that this was, you know, pitting white against black is how the rich people were keeping everybody down.
Right.
You know, how that was their mechanism for it.
Yeah,
when he finally made that realization, he's like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
So he just switched over to the other side. So it's got like his story, a bunch of other stories. He's got one, if you really are interested in World War II, called the Good War. And it's just a compilation of all these people he talked to during, well after the fact, but talking about their childhood or even their adulthood sometimes during World War II. Right. So he's talking to a real Rosie the Riveter, and he just gives you their story.
Oh, that's so cool.
You know, and you don't know what it's how these people like really convey like how panicked California was right after Pearl Harbor.
Oh, right.
Like we kind of know about it.
Because we would be next on the hit list, I would imagine.
Well, that's what we thought. We thought that their next step was going to be San Diego or San Francisco. Right? And they really, like, people lost their fucking minds over blackouts up and down the coast. You know, terrified that people getting their shotguns and hanging out on a beach at night waiting for the Japs to show up. A cat bag me at one of them Japs, right?
Well, isn't that the whole like premise of 1941?
Yes, right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, the movie. It's a great movie. It's a comedy.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad I gave you that bubbly water. You just burp it up into the mic, man.
Yeah, sorry about that, dude.
That's okay.
Apparently, he got himself a blue whale or something like that. Every once in a while, just sending out its plaintive call to its people.
Yeah. Oh man, I still, one of my fondest memories of last summer was doing your Jaws podcast.
That was a lot of fun.
That was so fun.
Yeah.
We did that live podcast.
I want to do some more of those.
Yeah, we did a live podcast. I've been recording you for the last 5 minutes.
I kind of figured you had.
Yeah, we just got to ease into it, you know. We did that live podcast in somebody's backyard where it was
Joe's.
It was Joe's backyard. The co-host on your podcast.
Yeah,
and we
podcast
watched,
by the way is Finley's on Film. Go check it out.
Yes.
There you go. Anyways, go on.
Oh yeah, just get that out of the way. Finley's on Film. Great podcast. Listen to it. I'm on a couple of episodes. I think I've done 2,
maybe 3.
Maybe 3.
Yeah.
I don't know. But either way, it's a ton of fun. And we sat in Joe's backyard. There were like 30 people, and we watched Jaws projected onto a bed sheet, and then we did a live podcast afterwards. That was so fun.
It was. Jaws is one of those movies that just translates. It's a goddamn great movie.
It really is. It's still, you still find yourself like picking your feet up, when the camera's like, coming up on the swimmer's legs, and movies are. You obviously have a whole podcast about it, but like movies have been a big thing for you.
Oh yeah, big, and I get them from my dad.
Is that? Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, that's absolutely part of the legacy. So does Joe, for that matter.
Oh,
Joe and my dad spent a lot of time. My dad was one of these people who discovered the VHS recorder early on. Like I remember him like doing the self-debate about beta and VHS. That's how old this thing was. So you got this fucking thing, weighed about the same as a refrigerator. This VHS recorder, put it on his enormous block of a television that weighed more than a refrigerator. And it was just huge, man. It would like almost break every time you opened it. You had to put your hand on, because it would like the recorder, the cassette would pop up, not out the way it does now.
Right.
So it would pop up, but you'd have to put your hand over it because you could damage the goddamn thing just letting it go on its own. Because pank, like it popped up.
Oh, funny.
Like an automatic rifle almost, like the release on that. So he would so he just had this whole system. He watched movies, like that was his hobby. He also taped a lot of music, but like movies was his thing, and he put like, he figured out to do the slowest speed, put 3 movies on it, thematically you didn't want to put a bunch of random movies on it because then you'd be searching everywhere to find, where this movie was on the tapes. So he would do it by like, usually by star.
Okay.
Sometimes by director. So you'd have a tape with like 3 movies by star or director.
That's funny.
And when I went over there, my dad was, he had custody every 2 weeks. So I'd go there and just like all weekend long, watching a movie, watch a movie, staying up till 3 o'clock, sometimes 5 o'clock in the morning. Right. My dad was not the parent who was, what do you want to say? He was not the disciplinarian parent.
Sure.
By any stretch of the imagination.
Well, before we get too far into that,
all right,
because that's some juicy dad stuff that I want to get into.
Juicy dad stuff?
But I want to talk a little bit more about you.
That sounds horrifying.
I want your juicy dad stuff.
I want my juicy daddy material. Let me tell you something about. He'd come in and be like, "You want some juice, son?" I'd be like, "Yeah, daddy, come on."
Dad, the juice.
Somehow we sounded exactly alike in sort of a hillbilly way.
Dribbling right down my
I think it was driving up and seeing the steer.
That's what it was. There's a lot of cows outside.
There's cattle to be had in this neighborhood.
Got you all frontier feisty.
Oh man, it's all fucking. I just want to talk about this, man.
Yeah.
We did a podcast last week. We went because that's another thing about this podcast that I love is that it makes me discover new movies.
Oh right.
So we're doing a podcast on Michael Caine. Here's a weird fact. Free video or even paid video access to like full Michael Caine movies, very difficult.
Really?
Very difficult.
Is that by
I could not
design?
find some classics. Like I could not find the Ipcris file. I could not get Zulu. I couldn't find fucking Zulu.
Wow,
there was like one place that had it like a full length version of Zulu, and you had to be Australian. You had to be living in Australia to watch the damn thing.
So what do you do in that situation? You just like go down to these
we
video
cycled
stores?
through and looked for a bunch of others, and we ran across one that I'd never heard of in my life, called Hurry Sundown.
Okay.
1967. Jane Fonda. What's her name? Meryl Streep's first fucking movie appearance in this thing.
Wow.
She also was in Bonnie, Clyde, and Clyde that year. And here's the great part. It's set in Georgia, and it stars Michael Caine.
Oh, okay.
So Michael Caine trying to put on a southern accent. So worth watching.
I can't even picture that.
Not a great movie, but so worth it just for all the other weird shit. It's one of those great bad movies.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I know you made me watch a bunch of good bad movies.
I don't mind a good bad movie sometimes.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah.
You had questions. I'm sorry.
I
could digress all fucking day, man.
No, you're fine. It's fun. Where did you grow up, though? I don't.
Well, now ain't that a really interesting question? When am I going to grow up? We're not entirely sure.
Where did you grow up?
Oh, where? I thought you said when.
I'm not being an asshole.
No.
When are you going to grow up?
That's a fucking legitimate question, man. I know I'm a comic. You know, growing up isn't part of the job description, bro.
If I had asked you that, if that was the question I'd ask so matter of factly.
When are you going to stop being a fat man child? How's that happening, buddy?
That'd be so fucked up.
I don't know, Daddy. Do you have any candy for me?
Have me more of those dad juices.
Where did I grow up? Okay.
Where did you grow up?
Oh fuck. Man, God damn it! Oh man, I swear
you're looking
to God.
at my Skyrim.
I'm in the Upcarian castle here, the Up Castle here, and Dave lives my life. And this is the fucking life I want. A place where I can unashamedly put like Gimli's axe on my wall and have a Skyrim map and all this nerdy stuff.
Yeah, if I'm being perfectly honest, like I've only been able to go this deep into it. Really, in the last year, well, just since I haven't had a girlfriend.
Need to get right. Once you need to get rid of the editorial commentary of a female. That needs to go away.
But okay. I feel like I did it in a classy way.
That's
like
it's
nerdy, but it's not like.
Well, okay, so you got a Skyrim map, like all the provinces of Skyrim, and it's well framed.
Yeah, it's framed, and it's it's
stuff
not like
is curling up with one piece of tape at the top, and the corners are coming out.
Right. It's not like it's a fucking Dragon Ball Z poster that's like one corner that Pushpin has come out on one corner. I try to keep it like
classy.
Yeah,
classy nerd.
Thank you,
nerd chic, brother. Anyways, okay, so where did I grow up? Well,
you grew up in Skyrim.
Yeah, really. In Tamriel, my elven kind. No, I grew up in San Jose, California.
Okay.
Yeah, I was born in San Francisco.
12 minutes to get to the answer.
Isn't that great? Yeah, it's fucking amazing. I was born in San Francisco. First couple of years in Daly City, but really I grew up in San Jose.
Oh, okay.
So, I would call it Fresno North.
Yeah.
There's actually a lot in common with Fresno.
Right. Was it, I mean, but this is like pre-Silicon Valley, like tech boom.
And this is right at the beginning of the Silicon Valley. So I was born in 1969. Silicon Valley really starts in the mid-'70s. And by that time, I was in San Jose. So I grew up in really most of my childhood in a kind of a housing project, really. But understand, a California, not some Chicago Rosa Parks Homes nightmare thing. It was just basically just bad apartment. Okay, so I grew up there and like just ran right down the block. Like so I was here like across there was a street in front of my house, and then across there was a chain link fence, and on the other side of that was Highway 280.
Wow, okay,
major
right
thing.
there. Yeah.
You know, for decades I couldn't sleep. For years after I got out of there, I couldn't sleep unless there were like cars zooming by. Right. Camping was nightmarish for me. I didn't know what to do with it.
Just pretend the wind in the trees is just traffic.
Yeah. And then just down the street, like, maybe another 50 yards, there was like orchards. It was all orchards in that area when we first moved in.
Dichotomy of city sound and then rural.
Well, San Jose used to be like Fresno, like used to be a serious fruit fruit basket, I guess you call it a fruit basket. Hello, serious fruit growers. Like Dole was stationed out of there. That was one of their major places, and so that was there when I first got there. And within I want to say 12 years or so, they'd replaced all that. That was all condos, really shitty condos.
Sure.
Yeah, the 80s, the perfect 80s condos that are now appearing on Love It or Listed. We're gonna fix this bullshit.
I know you have
This is where all the stucco is kept, sir. We keep it in our walls. God damn, what a lack of imagination they had. Anyway,
pile of asbestos. Okay, so you have.
You wish.
And I know you have a brother, right?
I do. My older brother.
Is it just the two of you?
No, actually, I have. This is where we start getting into the whole dysfunction angle.
Wow.
Okay, so I have my brother, my older brother, and then I have two older siblings, an older brother and an older sister.
Right.
Half sister, half brother. They're from my mom's side of the family. So she comes from a place called Hood River, Oregon. Okay, and she had two kids with this guy that she married, and then nobody knows what fucking happened with that whole thing, except that the dad got custody, she did not, and then the grandparents got custody. It probably had something to do with the fact that they were big ringers in the Mormon church. Up in that area, which was heavily Mormon at the time.
Oh, so the Mormon grandparents are like, nope, yeah, your kids are ours. Is that what
basically
it was?
Is what it comes down to? But my mom comes from like the time and place and generation where you just like she's a genius about not talking about stuff. Essentially, like she was married to my dad for 9 years before it was clear to anybody in the family that she had another family before.
Wild.
Yeah. So there was no idea, and then. At one point, like the year before the final split, she grabbed me and my brother and went up, visited them. So basically, I have two older siblings that I know very briefly. The older brother, I have no notion of. I can barely remember his name. The sister, she killed herself about 25 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, she was one of those rare situations where a female she used a gun. Wow. That's not common for women.
Yeah.
Right. And she had a hard time. She had kind of a hard life. I think she got into some drug dependency issues near the end there or something like that. Yeah, it was pretty rough. And I didn't really know her very well. She lived with us for about 6 months, and she was kind of a pain in the ass, quite frankly. But yeah.
And what kind of kid are you growing up? Obviously, you're very well read now. But were you always kind of the smartest kid in the class, or were you?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, no, pretty much. I really think that, I do consider myself intelligent, and I think people who do consider themselves smart basically come from a structure that told them they were smart a lot when they were younger, and I got that a lot when I was a kid. Like I was always called the smart one in the whole family. And I think I just kind of owned it and went forward. I don't know. I have no fucking idea now. Like, God help me if, I have a huge IQ apparently, but it has done me fat fucking lot of good. That has done. It has not.
We were just talking about how
that has not come to dollar signs at all.
I just picked you up from a nice apartment, but I've picked you up from real shit apartments too.
Oh, the one I lived in before that literally was just this. What was it? It was just a nightmare, man. I brag about the shitty decisions I've made with my life. That was one of the good shitty decisions right there. Accepting that, moving into that place. Like I'm living in a place now that is cheaper, has more privacy, has a workable kitchen, doesn't have cockroaches or crackheads.
I forgot to tell you.
I'm not kidding, crackheads. They were real crackheads living in my place at the end there. I was like, they're fighting. That man and woman are punching each other in the room outside of my door.
Just gonna turn my headphones
Lock,
on.
click.
Shitty little door
Slide
handle.
a sock
Lock.
underneath the door so they think they don't see the light coming through.
Yeah. Oh man. And so
Drywall my fucking door so nobody knew I was there. Oh.
So you're growing up. You're a smart kid growing up in kind of a shitty part of town. I mean,
No, it was a good part of town, but we were like this weird this little thumbprint of shitty in the middle of that whole thing. Like I had to go across the street, across like 1, 2, 3, like Stevens Creek Boulevard, and then like these old like beautiful houses and things like that. But my area I was in was like mostly like apartment buildings.
Gotcha.
So I came from like the poor side of town.
Sure, I got you.
Yeah.
And
I was a poor black child.
You were. Well, that's fine.
Just walking to school, nobody knows. Just swing low, sweet chariot.
And,
my mom would sing Negro spirituals to me. I'm not actually kidding.
Oh,
when I was a kid.
Really?
Yeah, she'd been in choir when she was a kid, and then she'd like just love Negro spirituals, and she would sing them to me. How fucking weird and racist is that? I don't know.
A little bit, but she was also Mormon, so they're weird.
Right.
And she was Mormon like back when it was like the cool culty Mormonism, not like the big corporate Mormonism like we have now.
Yeah, probably.
You know?
But it was that cool culty Mormonism that put together its money and put together the wealthy or Mormonism that we have today. For sure.
No doubt. I mean, it laid the groundwork, but I'm just saying it was a little more. It had more character.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
You know, I mean, now you think of Mormons as like spotless. You know, I mean, they're squeaky clean.
Yeah.
But back then they were a little,
But all the crazy, understand all the crazy and all the damage in me comes from my mom.
Oh, okay. That's
definitely.
real.
That's where it all comes from. She was completely out of her mind. And it became more and more problematic as the years went on.
Sure.
For sure.
And so what was your upbringing like then? I mean, you got kind of an eccentric mom and
eccentric is one word. She was merely eccentric at first. It was just a picture of a latchkey kid. I was totally that. Me and my brother were supposed to, get home, do chores and all that. We barely ever fucking did that. Of course, we were not well-behaved man children, but and then just wait for mom to see if she's going to be angry tonight. That was really what it come down to.
Was she working? Was that?
She worked full time. I remember like a couple of times. Like this is back before. There were like childcare options for women, single mothers. So she would take us into work like on Saturday. So she had to go into work on Saturday. Right. She dragged my ass along on Saturday, and I'd be sitting there like in a cafeteria. Remember those old coffee machines? Yeah. You press the button, and then like a little paper cup would drop.
Yeah, those are cool.
And then like a vampire would like jizz into some coffee beans, and it would. Of course, I got the hot chocolate at the time, but and the chicken soup. Yeah. She would drag us along to work. She worked for a company that contracted with NASA.
Oh, wow.
Because that's another thing about Silicon Valley is there was tech in that area to begin with. Sure. Silicon Valley was not an accident where it came up.
I got you.
Yeah. So we had that, and we had like serious fucking nerds that she worked with. And one day she came home, she had a copy each, one for me and one for my brother, of like legitimate blueprints some nerd motherfucker had put together of the Star Trek Enterprise.
Oh, that's so cool.
Did you know it had a bowling alley?
No.
Yeah. What? The original Enterprise had a bowling alley in it.
Of course it did. Why wouldn't it? Now that I think about it, it's obvious.
That's where, of course. Where else are you going to have Daniel Day-Lewis beat the hell out of a priest?
Yeah.
Fucking bowling alley.
Bowling
I love to think they had a bowling alley. The women with grava skates would come up and bring your fries to you. Do you want some of this? And they're chewing their bubble gum.
How old were your folks how old were you when your folks split up?
3 years old.
Oh, wow. So, yeah. I was 3 o'clock years old.
I was 3 years old. I remember she picked me up from from babysitter. Mm-hmm. There's this funny thing about this, which is if you have a babysitter that is sufficiently fucking awful, you will have that for the rest of your life. I got this woman. Her name was Mrs. Paz. She's an evil bitch.
Yeah.
Oh, I still hate her. Wow. I'm 49, and this was when I was 2.5, 3.
Wow.
She she was so fucking mean to us. She would she had her house. The kids would get dropped off. We'd get dropped off, and then she had her house, and all of her furniture was covered in plastic sheeting. Right? She'd serve you the same fucking thing every day. She made fun of me because I didn't know how to hold a spoon right.
Oh, jeez.
Couldn't you're supposed to hold it like this, right? Through here, like chopstick style or whatever. Yeah. Instead of overhand fist.
Yeah, like a fucking ogre.
Like a kid, right? Like the way you do. And she's like, "Oh, you must have bad parents." Like I remember her saying this shit to me, and then she would like go watch her. She would watch her. What do you call that? Soap operas. And when she was watching her shows, you took a nap. By which I mean she locked you in a fucking room with a bed in it.
Yeah.
And if you had to pee, you peed in the garbage can, which I did. I remember that. I did. Jeez. Oh, and I got so much trouble for it. But I was like, even then I was practical about it. Like, I didn't have an option, buddy. I don't know what you want me to do.
What do you want? Yeah.
I can't open the window.
That's so funny.
Right? No, it's fucking awful.
It's funny that you say that too, because like I have anybody that knows me or has known me for a while knows that I hate beans. I don't like beans. And now that I think about it, that hatred of beans came from a babysitter of mine.
Oh yeah,
named Deborah, who I was already kind of on the fence about beans, and I was probably maybe 4 or 5 at this. So it was like close in age to where you were. And I remember she was like, she put down this like bowl of beans for me for lunch, and I'm like, excuse me, like I don't really like beans. and she like screamed at me and made me eat that whole bowl of beans, and then she gave me a second bowl of beans to eat.
Oh, what rhymes with stunned?
Yeah, and
wow, not a nice lady.
I'm 32 years old, and I can't do beans.
I had one babysitter later on who this is like serious latchkey kid shit. I think I had one who did the same thing to me, but it was because every day she would serve the same Campbell chicken noodle soup. For the life of me, I don't even mind the taste of it, but I will never buy that shit. I will never make that on my own for my own reasons.
For sure, I always feel like Campbell's. I always had like a strong like
can.
Well, a strong
like a tin taste.
It always to me it always had like a strong like ammonia smell to it. Like it always like Campbell's soup always smelled a little bit like pee to me.
Yeah. There's something unreal. There's something unnatural about Campbell soup.
For sure. Yeah.
Later on, this was babysitter that I had. Later on, I dated a woman who had her as a babysitter, and she was like, "Yeah, she was a real cunt." Like she was like, "That's the one thing I agreed upon with this one woman."
Yeah.
Oh my god, that was a terrible relationship.
That's wild.
Anyway, so yeah, my mom picked us up from Mrs. Paz, and then we moved down to this is my mom's classical thing. Moved us down to San Jose. We moved in with a guy named Blackie.
Oh wow,
yeah, and she didn't like. It wasn't like she and my mom my dad had an argument. He came home that night, and all the furniture was sold, and his children were gone without a note. So we didn't know where we were for like 3 months.
Wow, that's got to be gut wrenching.
Oh, you think he had a private detective apparently.
Whoa,
an actual private detective to find us.
Were you old enough to really know what was going on, or no?
No idea.
Yeah,
no idea.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And you were 3 at the time, and you've got a younger brother.
No, my older brother.
Oh, he's older.
He's 3 years older than me, so he was.
Got it.
He was a manly 6.
Oh.
Bastard.
Yeah. Wow, that's rough, man.
Yeah, it's pretty trippy, man.
And so you're grown up, and does your mom like? And you were saying, and it was like would see your dad on the weekends and that sort of thing.
We had him every 2 weekends. We'd go see my dad, and then once during the summer we were there for we had like a 3-week stay over. You know, we'd always go to Disneyland.
Oh, that's nice.
Dad always saved up. We went to Disneyland.
Yeah. And so you grow up in the midst of it sounds kind of chaotic. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's pretty fair to say. And it was it was kind of the time and place for this kind of thing too. I mean, early 70s is when I think the female population of America discovered the joys of divorcing that bastard.
Yeah.
It really was when that sort of came into being.
Right. When you and then I know did you join the Navy right out of high school, or did you? Was that a weird to go from all of that chaos to sudden order and regimen?
First off, it was fabulous to get out of the house. That's what I got in the Navy for, because my mom by that time had really sort of gone off the rails. It was really hard to live there. But I would say it made it a difficult fit.
Oh, okay.
I was in the Navy for 4 years, just under 4 years, but never really. I was never going to be a lifer. It's just that was almost immediately, apparent.
Yeah.
I didn't fit in with a highly regimented sort of lifestyle. Just isn't me. So. Yeah, it made the Navy more difficult than it should have been, for sure. But the thing is when you go from, this is true of anybody going into the military, I would think, when you go from your mom and your dad to being more than your average adult. Your average adult doesn't go into a job where other people's lives can depend on what you do.
Sure.
Really? So when you go into the military, there's an extra wrinkle of grown up that comes along with it, I think.
Sure. I mean,
I know very few people who are ready for that. And the old myth of like, I went to the military, I'm going to go learn to get some discipline in my life. Nah, it doesn't work. In my experience, you're just going to get fucked with for not having discipline initially.
Yeah.
I've seen some people who do it, but most people don't turn their life around.
Do you feel like it ended up like exacerbating things at all?
Yeah, it made things really difficult. You know, I was kind of the odd man out as far as my immediate chain of command was going.
Gotcha.
And the thing is, when your immediate chain of command doesn't like you, they can dick you really hard.
Oh, that sucks. Yeah. And so when you got out of the Navy, is that when you ended up in San Francisco?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, not immediately. I came out. I took a train across country, came to San Francisco. But my brothers, when he picked me up, I spent my first month out. I was crashing on his couch, and then his wife got tired of me, and so I moved in with my dad for a little while, and then I moved in with my cousin in San Francisco. You met Joe. We moved into San Francisco briefly, and then he had to go someplace. I think he went up to Alaska or something like that. So we broke up the band, and then we moved in together again shortly thereafter. And then it's kind of been that sort of a thing.
Sure.
When I got into software was when I kind of had my first place more or less on my own. I did software quality assurance for quite a while.
Oh, okay. Where does the comedy come in?
Well, comedy comes in. I'm a latecomer to comedy. I got into this at 30. Well, although sort of not. So here's what it was. When I got out of the Navy, one of my jobs for like 4 years, I was working at a comedy traffic school.
Oh, funny.
So I knew a bunch of these comics who were also teaching traffic school. I didn't want to be a stand-up comic. I didn't like the example that they set for me of what stand-up comedy, what their lives are like. It was like, fuck that. I didn't want none of that. I didn't want to be that much of a burnout. I didn't want to be that upset with life. I wanted to not do that, right? So I made a couple of friends out of them, and one of them was a guy named Curtis, and we later on. We worked in software together. He really helped me because he backed out of comedy, went into software, and he kind of pulled me along with him. So I got into that. But later on, he decided he wanted to teach stand-up comedy. Now, at this point, I was a shitty poet, very not good poet, and I would write poems, and then I would go to poetry readings and the occasional poetry slam, which I was fucking. Anyways, I would get up there with my single sheet of paper, and it would shake. Like I was terrified of being in front of people, terrified.
Yeah.
So I was like, fuck, I don't want to do this. And then Curtis, my friend named Curtis Matthews, he decided he wanted to start teaching stand-up. So I was like, fuck, if I can do a stand-up set, I can surely read in front of poetry. Right? So I'm just going to use this as a tool to get used to reading, talking to people. And so I went in, and the first time I got on stage, man, it was crack. I was hooked immediately. That set sucked. I'd be in all honesty, it was not a good set.
That's okay.
But I didn't want to get off stage.
Yeah, right.
And then I wanted to get on immediately thereafter. And I didn't know that to a certain personality type, and I was that personality type. Becoming a stand-up comic, it's like a calling, and you recognize it almost instantly.
Yeah.
I did with this. Like there was a part of my soul that was missing. I didn't know it was missing.
That's so funny.
Until the first time I got on stage.
That's exactly how I describe it too. I didn't know that I wanted to be a comic, and then I had I quit my job because I was so miserable, and I always liked to write, and any story or anything that I ever wrote, my favorite part of the story was the funny parts. I liked writing the funny parts, and I one day I was submitting job applications and doing all sorts of bullshit, and I was just feeling super depressed, and I was like, I'm going to write all my funny parts. All the funny parts that I ever had rolling around in my head. So I wrote out all these funny parts. I'm like, man, I wish there was a genre or a medium or a forum where you could just say the funny parts.
Right.
I was like, oh my God, I want to be a stand-up comedian. And that was sort of reverse engineered my way into stand-up comedy.
No, in retrospect, I think I know where this comes from, though. It took me, I've been doing this for a long time, but I didn't really think about it until a couple of years ago. But I think it actually comes when I was really young. When we were kids, me and my brother would watch on Saturday on the channel. We'd watch old TV shows, old movies and things like that. And they had a specialty thing. They put on a lot of Abbott and Costello.
Oh, right.
So my dad, the fucking lunatic that he was, I gotta say this about my dad, is he always had our fucking back. And sometimes he kind of put his own agenda into it. This might have been partly both. Sure. But he basically convinced us that we wanted to learn who's on first, what's on second.
Yeah, you've told me a little bit about this.
So he taped the goddamn thing, wrote it out, and then me and my brother memorized it. And so we did it at every family gathering and a bunch of like Cub Scout and Boy Scout stuff. Like, I was in Cub Scouts, my brother was in Boy Scouts. Yeah. At one point we did it in front of the mayor of San Jose, which at the time seemed amazing to me. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's not that big a deal now.
I don't know, it's kind of cool.
It's not the mayor of Istanbul, though. You know? This guy. But I remember I enjoyed that a lot. You know, that sensation, and I think that had stuck with me. And when I finally got on stage again later, you know, those 27 years later or something like that, 20 years later, it was like, oh, this is boom. Like I said, it was just instantly. There was a part of me that just clicked into place. Right? And the idea of quitting, really, I've never really contemplated it since. You know, I mean, come on, I'm 18 years in, and I've lived in, and now I'm in Fresno.
Sure,
I'm basically a fail, is what we're saying here. Like comedy-wise, the train has passed, and at this point, I don't really give a shit because now I get to do it for the pure reason of the love of it.
Sure,
which is good. That's kind of nice.
You don't have like the axe of what am I doing, really kind of hanging over your head. You can,
exactly. You know, and I got into it just at the point where like San Francisco's real estate was starting to go nuts. Yeah. And I was an SF comic. So there was no chance of like really making a living doing it.
Sure.
Or just doing it full time. It was just not a possibility in my circumstances. And I tried and I went fucking bankrupt.
Well, and kind of doing the math on it. So you're getting into a comedy like 98, 2000-ish.
2000.
And that's sort of I mean, I could be totally off about this, but that's sort of like a comedy's on a downswing at that point.
Yes, it was definitely on a downswing. And the .com crash had just happened.
Yeah.
And so I was like right in the middle of that.
The mid 90s had peaked and crashed.
Joe, that wasn't me.
No. Oh, is that your thing?
I often bang
the microphone. Yes. Sorry, I'm just talking
Drives
about my hands
bananas.
Smacking my own microphones around right now. But yeah, so yeah, the mid 90s comedy boom is busted, and we haven't quite gotten into the era we're in now with comedy. So yeah, I mean, what's like? I have to imagine that's got to really separate the wheat from the chaff as far as people that want to do comedy, right? Like,
I think that was there was a certain. It was interesting, because I was part of this school that eventually got pretty decent, pretty large, and had a kind of a screwy influence in the San Francisco comedy scene. Comedy in its natural form, and certainly at this point, was like, man, it was a fucking marathon. I liken it to being like a Spitfire pilot in World War II.
Interesting.
And during the Battle of Britain, where you they put you in a Spitfire, you go do your goddamn thing, you look around, and suddenly you're the only person who came from your class. Everybody's fucking gone. So that is the natural. during a downturn in comedy. That's the natural environment of it. Is people just drop out all the fucking time, right? What we did with it, because I was part of the San Francisco Comedy College, we actually sort of pushed it a little bit like that. We extended the lifespan because it was kind of a kinder, gentler space.
Sure,
it's hard. It's really hard, particularly in a city, to find a place that isn't, an open mics that aren't shitty, just straight shitty, and that's bad enough. That'll drive you out.
Yeah.
So the idea with this place was to try to also teach comedy, but also to provide a place where you could do it. And for a while, it was wildly successful. They put on some really great shows, but it kind of skewed the lifespan. And I would say, where I am right now, I would say the lifespan is also similarly skewed, just in general in comedy, because it's so there's so many different ways and venues to go out being a comic, right? So the turnover isn't as drastic as it was at that time. It was pretty drastic.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
That is.
And one thing I took away from that is when somebody goes, "I'm going to quit comedy," I have no judgment. Like, I get it, dude.
Sure, man.
This is a bitch.
This shit sucks.
Yeah. Please do so as soon as you want. That way, maybe I might get some more stage time.
Totally.
It puts a little like white shark in your blood a little bit. On that.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we've really gotten to know you. This is a podcast where we talk about dads.
Yeah.
Your name's Tom Smith.
I am.
And you have a dad.
That's my stage name. It took me years to come up with that. No,
Tom Smith? Oh, man.
I've so many times thought about trying to come up with, I've come up with different, and I've tried them, and I just didn't like it. I don't like being chased off my name. I'm not doing that.
Like Elijah Holyfield. You're like, oh my God, Elijah Holyfield? Is that your real name? And it's like, no, my real name's Tom Smith.
Yeah, right. No, Maurice Micklewhite is my name. You know who that is, right?
I don't know who that
It's
is.
Michael Caine.
Oh, is it really? That's his real name?
Yeah, it's a Marion Morrison.
Miriam, I don't know who that is.
That's John Wayne.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's an actor named Stuart Granger. You want to know what his real name was?
Yeah.
James Stewart.
Wow.
He had to change it because there was already Jimmy Stewart.
Oh, that's funny.
Fuckers. Anyways. Enough of my...
Yeah,
God, I love jacking off to things that I know.
Yeah. It's a weird...
How piquant.
Weird flex, bro, but whatever. It's fine.
What a weird fucking thing to be proud of.
Yeah, so I usually, when it comes to the dad thing, I usually start at the beginning, which is...
Well, I swam down my dad's vast
yeah,
deference.
just...
Straight
lovely.
into my mother's gaping vagina.
Yeah, lovely urethra. I love what you've done with the place, Dad. But yeah, where did your dad grow up?
San Francisco. Dad's I'm by extension, I'm a fifth, because I was born in San Francisco. I will claim that. I'm a fifth generation San Francisco.
Shit.
Yeah, we were like the founding of like San Francisco as a city.
Wow.
My family was there. They came over from Cork, Ireland.
Wow.
Yeah, and they made a lot of money. The Smiths. Particularly made a lot of money in the ship salvage game in San Francisco, because all the ships that people took to get to the gold rush, they left in the harbor. So they went in and salvaged a bunch of those. So they became sort of millionaires in the early life of San Francisco.
Just ripping shit apart. Huh?
Just pissed it away since. I haven't seen a dime of that shit. Mother hovers.
Wow. And so what? Yeah. I mean that. So, and how old's your dad?
My dad?
Yeah. What
Shit.
year of
You
San
make me
Francisco?
do math in my head. So he's 43 is when he was born. So
okay.
76.
Okay.
Yeah, 76. Yeah.
So, but before so he's growing up in San Francisco, like in the 50s and 60s.
50s, yeah. 60s is he graduated high school in 1961.
Wow, that's a golden era to be in San Francisco.
It really kind of was too, man. It was like it was a kind of a cool town. I came across like this really cool. What do you want to call it? Like a documentary. Some concerned citizen group had gotten together the money, and they got in like some gang toughs from the neighborhood. San Francisco had like a weird sort of neighborhood by neighborhood gang situation.
Okay.
But they called themselves car clubs. They were gangs, but they were gangs in like the asphalt jungle sort of sense of the word.
Okay.
And somebody went and gave some money to one of them to go around and film and just sort of create this like a montage to car club life in San Francisco. My dad was in one of those things.
Whoa,
he basically most of his life he's worn that uniform. I didn't know that for the longest time. I thought he just wears the same thing every goddamn day. What's up with that?
It's
a tan windbreaker, just a button-down shirt and some tan chinos.
Wow,
that was his thing.
That's your dad's
almost all of my life. He's worn that, and I didn't realize it. But that was like an old car club thing.
Yeah,
back in early San Francisco at that time.
You take the guy out of the car club. You can't take the car club out of the guy.
Yeah, well, you can, but can't leave your buddies behind.
The club. But so okay.
And then his vast deference came along.
What was he? Was he a smart guy?
Smart guy. Like really talented musically. He taught himself the language. Like he spoke Russian because the neighborhood he grew up was in one of the Russian neighborhoods.
Oh no shit.
In SF, so he had a bunch of friends, and he learned Russian from them. It was really interesting. Yeah, he also spoke Spanish more or less fluently. He had that going for him. He played like 3 instruments, and he never took apparently he didn't really do well in the lessons, but he still did good. He was one of those people who could listen and play. Like, he had an ear apparently.
Sure.
So kind of a boy genius sort of a vibe coming off of him early, but then he. And then he kind of mellowed out. And he had himself got married, had himself to a crazy woman. Had 2 kids, me and my brother, and worked for PG&E. And
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, was he part of a big family, or was he?
Yeah, we had a large dysfunctional family. Like my dad's like approach to parenting was to look at his dad and do nothing that guy did. My grandfather was he was a drunken piece of work is what he was. He was very abusive to the family. And my dad, as like the oldest and the boy, took the brunt of that. Like there was a lot of physical violence in the household, essentially. So, so that was his thing. Was like he was going to be everything his dad wasn't in an attempt to be a father. Like ultimately, my dad's dream in life was to be the better father than his dad.
That's kind of nice.
It was great. I mean, I reaped the benefits of it. Like I said, my dad has never been anything but backed me 100%.
Really?
Right? He's been good. I mean, he's not been, the disciplinarian. He's examples haven't always been the greatest necessarily, but he's definitely tried his hardest, and he certainly never gave me a black eye. So
That's nice.
yeah, that was great.
How serious?
And his father was. Like I said, old Red Smith. I actually look a lot like that guy.
Your
without the beard.
Your
Yeah.
grandpa?
My grandfather, yeah.
Oh, wow.
The drunk, abusive one who I blame partially for O.J. Simpson. Oh, yeah, right. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
So there's this great documentary on Netflix right now, and it's like the life of O.J. Simpson. And they go back to his days because he grew up in San Francisco.
Okay.
Okay. And he was part of the busing thing. So there's this interview with Al Cowling, and he's talking about how they got caught playing craps in one of the bathrooms. And so they had to go see old man Smith. The dean of boys for Galileo High School. It was my grandfather.
No shit.
He let OJ go and punish the other kids.
That's funny.
The motherfucker set it up, right? Set him
Oh,
up for
man.
a life of no consequence.
Yeah. How fucking.
That's a trippy little story.
That is
man.
a trippy little story. Oh man, how serious was your dad about music?
Not really. He never really did. I mean, no, he had a fucking great guitar. He had like a Gibson Sunburst, 61 or something
like
like
a
an
Les Paul,
original,
yeah.
like this beautiful hollow body guitar. It was just fucking lovely.
Yeah.
And my brother borrowed it and broke the goddamn thing.
Oh, God.
Stepped on the head in a way that it couldn't be repaired.
Oh no.
Or they would have, but it would not have been. It would never have worked again or something.
Sure.
Like that. So that was a bummer. So yeah, no, I mean, he played guitar a little bit to himself, but he never really followed through on that.
Yeah,
It was always
yeah.
kind of interesting. I actually asked him about that one time.
Yeah.
Because it seemed to me like he had a bunch of dreams and talents, and he never really went anywhere with it, as far as I could tell. And
And at what point does your mom come into the picture? Like, how did they meet? Do you know?
Oh, no, not really. Oh, wait a minute. No, she was, I think my mom was babysitting for my aunt's kids.
Oh, okay.
Because my dad's sister, Susan, had she had 3 kids. She had kids very early. She had their first one when she was 16 or 17. That was her way to get out of the house.
Let's go pop a couple babies out.
Yeah, right. Well, and that was legitimate at the time, so she did. And then I think my mom was babysitter, and that's how they met her. And much past that, I don't know very much about that.
Sure.
I sort of gleaned a little bit over the years.
And at this point, your mom had left the Mormon church. She
was never really a Mormon. She every once in a while she would try to get religious with us or introduce us to Mormonism, and she didn't really care enough.
And he just did. I mean,
my dad was Roman Catholic, by the way.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
And he just had no idea. Was your mom fundamentally different then, or was she just kind of hiding the bag of crazy that?
Oh, she was hiding the bag of crazy, and she was also stunning.
Oh, okay.
My mother was really good looking. You wouldn't know that to look at me, but my mom was very beautiful and very sort of exotic, in an exotic way. She had enough Native American where it made a difference to sort of her look. Yeah, she's very attractive.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh yeah,
I didn't realize you were Native American.
Me, yes. Dances with papusa. Dances with burrito is my sacred Indian name. Yeah, I know.
Oh man,
Dances with heart disease.
How long do you folks?
And I know nothing about dances with. Apparently, what the fuck am I doing? Yeah, it's like one. It doesn't appear in me, but my mom and her mom especially, you could tell.
How long were they dating before they got married?
Sorry, that was unpleasant. That was loud. It was a terrible sound. Wow. Shit, I don't know. I would say probably probably about a year or something like that. And I think my brother expedited their getting married. That was something we kind of sat down one day. Me and my brother did a little bit of the math.
Shit.
And we're like, oh shit. And really the way it comes together is that their relationship was pretty stormy. I think.
Was it?
Yeah, that's one of the first memories I can actually really remember, which was them fighting, like a bowl of spaghetti getting thrown at the wall, that kind of thing. I remember that very vividly. But to put it this way, my brother, I think, is the impetus for them getting married, and I was, I think, an attempt to try to stay married.
I see.
Yeah, I think I was legitimately, when I came along, I was going to be the spackle.
Gotcha.
On the relationship that didn't have much of a chance. Right.
Are they and at this time, are they, because they're still living in San Francisco, right?
No, and at this point, by the time I come along, we've moved down to Daly City.
Oh, okay.
My grandmother had a house in Daly City. Now, she'd remarried when my grandfather died. He died before I was born. Mm-hmm. She remarried another gentleman who had been doing lazy circles around them for years. This guy basically had been been like trying to nail my grandmother while she was still married. Like he'd been trying to like ease in on it. Like he was a friend of the family or something like that. And then when Grandpa died, she married him, and they moved into San Francisco in this really bitchin' area. And when they did, like they rented out her house to my dad, to us, to our family. So I grew up the first couple of years in Daly City. California, which is probably where I get my love of fog. That's my favorite weather.
Oh yeah, well, I love a nice fog. I mean, there's a lot of that around here. You got to be.
It's a different feel.
You and your plebeian fog.
Yes, not as the noble ocean. Really. Like I lived in Daly City. Like I remember, like you could like sit on this. You could sit in the house and look out this huge window that we had in the house on the second floor, and you could see the fog just roll right down the street.
That's nice. Yeah.
To this day, it's got to be cold.
Yeah, sure. And it sounds like, I mean, obviously they had this tumultuous breakup, your mom and dad. I mean, where you went missing for 3 months.
Yeah, I think I'd call it tumultuous.
Yeah, that's pretty intense.
Kind of a prick thing to do. I
mean, how does your? I mean, obviously there's some genuine concern on your dad's part because he's hired a private eye, and I think any parent whose children went missing would be. But I mean, does he kind of like maintain his cool for the most part though? Like, or I mean, is he as dynamic in any of the same ways that your mom is, or is he just cool as a cucumber your entire life?
Well, I mean, he's cool as a cucumber because he's Irish Catholic and he's fighting, pushing that shit down. There's a lot of turmoil in my father that I never saw, but I know is there.
Sure.
Right. And it sort of manifests. I mean, he became, he sort of, like over the years, like he put such an emphasis on me and my brother that like I didn't know he dated women, except then when he started talking about it later on, like inappropriately. Like I was the only 7th grader I knew who knew what the words eating pussy were.
Yeah.
And I heard it from my dad. Yeah, and I told my friends, and none of them talked to me for a little while. No, it's a thing grown-ups do, and I swear,
My dad does it all the time.
Oh, man, you can't get enough. Puts them on like a hat, like a Bugs Bunny bathing camp. Ding, ding, ding.
It's so funny.
Like that. But, he kind of like did a shutty. He got a series of sort of small angle hobbies, the movies and music, like recording movies and recording music. That became like his obsession for pretty much the next 2 or 3 decades. His social life kind of petered out. Now, a lot of this actually has to do with the fact that my dad also has MS and has had it since he was a young man. I remember when I was really small, when my parents were still together, like visiting him in the hospital. I remember that. I don't know any of the context of it. I just remember that as kind of a fact. But so my dad is basically, and they didn't know. They thought it was a brain tumor at first.
Oh my God!
And gave him 3 months.
Oh, wow.
And then it turned out it wasn't that. It was MS, which they had no way of treating. There was no treatment for it. And what, the expected life outcome of a person with MS was very short.
Right.
And or very awful. Like you were headed you were going to a wheelchair within a certain amount of time. Well, come to find out later on that some MS manifests itself in different ways, and my dad's was very fortunate. It never really kicked in. It didn't send him into a wheelchair or any of that. It just gave him some occasional dizzy spells and a little bit of this. Every once in a while he'd get a small attack, but he never get. But he there was a part of him. If you look at it, you look at it and you go like he was kind of waiting. It seemed like for that to come at some point. He didn't want it to catch him unawares, and he didn't want anybody's pity. He was really not for that kind of a thing. So he kind of pushed a lot. He kind of pushed a lot of to the fault. Sure. In the way that kind of thing I think can be very damaging to most people.
Sure.
Right, is when you push away the emotion rather than feel it. And I think that was a lot of my dad's the last 40 years of his life, maybe 50. I don't know.
Did he ever remarry?
No, never. Never. It was never even an option. He had a girlfriend who would come over on weekends for they were together for 20 years.
Wow.
Or something like that, somewhere in that neighborhood. And she would come over and I guess they would bone on the weekends. And those mostly when I wasn't there, but then later on a little bit when I was a teenager, she was there. I didn't hear it. No, I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know.
Yeah.
But that was a one trick he played on me and my cousin. Joe and I were I guess it's weirdly inseparable for a little while. We have a lot of shared history. There's the one time when, damn it, my dad played a really kind of brilliant, heinous trick on me and my cousin, because we were like 15. You remember? It was like 14 or 15. Do you remember how painful the notion of never ever getting laid was at that point.
Oh yeah, like when you were a kid, you're like, I will never have sex.
No woman is going to do that. How do I make this happen? I got to do something like that. And he kind of played a bit of a trick on us, which he basically, okay, here's this hooker I know, and he had his girlfriend on the line, and she like sort of talked to us for a little while. We were like, oh, really? You're gonna be a hooker? Okay, great. It was fucking very inappropriate, but really hilarious.
Wait, hang on.
Yeah, exactly.
He had his girlfriend was
she
on
didn't.
the phone.
She didn't. It wasn't like she wasn't sex talking us on the phone, but she was like trying to cut the deal. Let's figure out how much this is going to cost and for what kind of services.
That's so fucked up.
That's so fucking hilarious. It's so funny. Oh man, I don't know if I should have told that. Should I have told that story?
Two teenage boys trying to
just hard-ons with fucking eyelids, right?
Yeah.
That's all we were at this point, and just obsessed with this goddamn thing, And my dad had this one porno tape which I just found online. There's one porno that he apparently got from a friend of his. Yeah, called the Erotic Trilogy, and it was this terrible porn from late 70s, early 80s.
And you just recently Googled that.
I just did. I was like, because you know what the funny thing is like there's one it's called the Erotic Trilogy, which is they're not erotic and barely a trilogy as I recall. But the first one was called Tennis Anyone, and I spent all my time looking for Tennis Anyone. And the other day, like I want to say, like literally within the last 2 weeks, I was like, what about the whole thing? And I put in the Erotic Trilogy. Boom, sure enough, 1983, the Erotic Trilogy. Yeah, go watch it if you want to know exactly how I got this warped.
You watched 210 minutes of this trilogy.
It's terrible.
Oh man, I like that your like response to 70s porn is like, well, actually, I'm not sure this is a trilogy.
Not a trilogy.
You fucking film nerd.
I'm a nerd. Yeah, I'm a relentless fucking douchebag for sure.
That's so silly.
I have no fucking. I have no excuse.
I mean, your dad sounds like he's an interesting guy. He sounds sounds like a real sweetheart, though. I mean, is that fair?
Yeah, a nice guy. Yeah. I mean, now he's old and he's got what every old guy does eventually, which is sort of like they crouch back down into sort of their you become conservative. And he's definitely got that. Right? Sure. And he comes from a time and place where it gets a little bit awkward sometimes still. Sure. But he's a sweetheart of a man.
Where's he living?
Very sweet man. Well, he's in San Francisco right now. Okay. He had a stroke. I want to say about 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago. Yeah. And at the time we were living together because he was sort of falling apart. So I moved in. We got an apartment together, and basically I was my job was there to try to help him not fall apart, but really what I was doing is presiding over the fucking proceedings. I didn't have it's a funny thing is I didn't grow up with my dad. I never was in a position of going, fuck you, Dad. Like I never had that moment. Sure. I never had a rebellious moment with my dad. Till this day, I still haven't. Right, and I'm 49. So there was none of that. So it's pushing back on an essentially a stubborn person. Sure. That was just not in my DNA when dealing with my pops. And I did everything I could. I think. But when somebody's basically bullshitting you, there's nothing you could do. And when some people gets to it, when a person gets old enough to the point where they start falling apart, they start also like crowding on the bullshit. Right? Like, so Dad, do you have heart medication? Do you have any kind of medication we need to be getting? Yeah. Oh no, I got none of that. Boom, he had a stroke, and come to find out, he'd been on fucking heart medication he'd been given heart medication 5 years previously. He hadn't taken it.
Oh wait,
right. So it was totally, that was just him being stubborn about the whole thing. Sure. Right. So good guy. He's living there. He had the stroke. He's got some decent recovery since then, and but he's living in a kind of what they call a rehab facility. Oh, okay. This is a bullshit name. Nobody's rehabbing out of the fucking thing. Yeah.
Well, this is the part of the show. I should have given you more of a heads up on this. So you could have thought about it.
This is the part where we talk about the Jewish agenda, Tom.
This is what.
This part of the show is brought to you by Stormfront.
Okay, so this is part of the show where I ask for a dadictote.
A dadictote.
Just I call them just a fun story. It could be a profound story about your dad. An anecdote.
Okay,
a dad.
All right, I got it.
I don't know if you have any left in the chamber. Okay.
So, like I said, my dad had visitation rights with us every 2 weeks, right? Yeah. And he would drive up on Friday night, and every time I'd be just like, he's out there, open the door, and I would run down the fucking sidewalk and just jump right into his arms. It was awesome. I love that, right?
Yeah.
It was beautiful. I just remember, I think I was 11. And by this time, I'd started growing little boy man tits. And I just remember the look of panic in his face as I hurtled into his arms. And the gentle conversation we had about that on the drive back to his place that night. I think we're going to not need to do that anymore. He's holding his back. He's driving like a 1972 car.
Oh, man, Tom, you've been a great guest today.
It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much.
God, it's fun. Geez, I love talking about myself, don't I?
You sure do, but that's okay. It's the whole part of this. Yeah.
Wait till you edit this down into something coherent. And
Yeah. I feel like we really got the dad juices flowing. So they're everywhere. I'm going to need a mop.
I'm going to slip on this thing. Put my lawyer on the phone now, please.
I got some paper towels over there. But if people want more Tom Smith in their life.
Oh, come check me out, TomSmithComedy.com.
Yeah.
Or come to, if you really are feeling feisty, go into Facebook and look up Tom Smith. Good luck, motherfucker.
Yeah, but and then you've also got a great podcast that we want to plug one more time.
Oh, yeah. Go check out Finley's on Film. We talk about old movies. We have opinions. Basically, it's like me, not as funny as I was today with my cousin, who's also not as funny. So. No, it's really fun. We have a great time with it. We have a history with it, and we love talking about it. So
it's great. You got a ton of episodes out right now, right? It's like you're in the 90s.
We're approaching 100 episodes, and we're approaching. I want to say, I think we're at 24 or maybe 25 of the special reserve episodes, which is what we put on. There's a Patreon level where if you contribute, you get these free episodes. We've got like 25 of those.
Oh, that's great, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
That's nuts. I've got like 50.
It is a weird thing when you realize that it's been a fucking year and you've been doing this damn thing every week.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
I got like, I think this is going to be episode 54-ish. And I think back, I'm like, God. How did this happen?
As a comic, too, you're like, I don't really accomplish anything of a notable nature of like a physical, like holding your hand thing. But then, like after a year, you've got a year's worth of fucking podcasts. I think it's kind of cool. It's an accomplishment.
And I think it's just cool to have like a body of work.
Yeah.
You can kind of like point to, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like,
right.
And I think that just is very, I mean, it's nice. Yeah. But anyway.
You're nice.
You're nice. Tom Smith, thanks so much.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Tom Smith, everybody. He was great, right? I love that man. Follow him on all the social medias. Go to his website, TomSmithComedy.com. I had to go to his website to get a picture for the promo for him. So I went to his website. It's it's a nice-looking website. So go see that. All right, guys. And, so just a couple of housekeeping things. If you could rate and review on iTunes, I'd love you forever. If you feel like supporting the show financially, you can go to the Sad Dad Patreon. I'll link that in the show notes. Also, if you have any dadictotes of your own you want me to read on the air, saddadpodcast@gmail.com. I will do that for you. I will absolutely do that for you. And then we'll be back next week. Have a really, really fun episode with a great comedian up doing our shows this week, Kelsey Lane. So I'll be back next week. And you guys have a good one. Adios.